Welcome along again to this special evening. And the idea for this came out of basically trying to have some kind of a Dharma program online. So that's what we've been doing. The Dublin Buddhist Centre's been doing for the last, what is it now? It's almost a year. It'll be a year around St. Patrick's Day, which was when we went online. And one of the things that's really difficult to communicate, I think, online is community and friendship. So a lot of the other things you can communicate quite effectively, like you can communicate, for example, what the mindfulness of breathing meditation is and how you might do it. You can communicate, like impermanence and unsatisfactoriness. Unsatisfactoriness at the moment is quite easy to communicate. But one thing that's quite difficult to communicate is friendship and the value of friendship and of community. So I thought actually, why not address that just by actually talking to a couple of friends about their friendship, and in that way kind of highlight that very important aspect of the Dharma life. So that's why I've invited Subhadramati and Vishvantara to join us tonight, because they're friends and have been friends for quite some years. We'll hear about that in a moment. That's just a little bit by way of background. What I want to do now is just introduce our two guests. I'll do this quite briefly because you'll hear more about their lives from the interview. So firstly, Vishvantara, she lives in a women's residential community in East London, and she was ordained in 2005, and her name means she who carries a universe within. And I've kind of seen Vishvantara over the years, off and on. I've also kind of got to know her through Subhadramati. Subhadramati is a good friend of mine. And again, I think that's something that can happen with friends. You almost become friends with somebody through osmosis. And I think that's happened a bit with Vishvantara. Subhadramati's spoken so fondly of her over the years. I've encountered her particularly. I think the first time I encountered her was as part of a Buddhist opera. She was in the chorus. That's right, isn't it, Vishvantara? You were part of it, yeah. And many years ago, we produced an opera, Maitreya Bandhu's sort of brainchild. Anyway, she's got a lovely sparkling intelligence and sensitivity to life, I think, Vishvantara. That's what I've noticed. She's also a poet and musician, and she's actually rescheduled her music lessons so she can be with us tonight, so thanks for that. And she's very much, I think of Vishvantara as someone who's very much a practitioner of the religion of art. She's no dilettante. She's really passionately engaged in finding value and meaning through the arts. And I've heard her talk about that very, very vividly and movingly and articulately. So I'm really happy that you're here with us, Vishvantara. Yeah. And then there's Subhadramati. So probably known to most of us because she's our president. She's the president of our centre, and also used to live in Dublin. She lived in Dublin for quite some years. She also lives in a women's residential community in East London, but a different one. And she is very much involved in the London Buddhist Centre. And she was ordained in 1995. And her name means very beautiful devotion, dharmically radiant determination, and very auspicious intelligence. So we've got some heavy hitters here tonight, folks. So you're both very, very welcome. I could have said a lot more by way of introduction, but I'm sure your qualities will come across when we hear from you. And I just wanted to begin by asking you how you met.
I'm really sorry. Can I just do something with the spotlight just to change it for 1 second? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure thing, yeah.
My apologies now for this. Can you see now, Subhadramati?
Hang on, should I go on speaker view again?
I'm not sure. I think speaker view, yeah.
I can see you, and then everybody else is still in little boxes.
Oh, okay. Me being me or Jnanadhara? Me.
You being you, better share it.
Okay. Can Jnanadhara, what do you see?
I can see me and Subhadramati and Vishvantara.
Okay, I think it's at your end, Subhadramati. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, don't worry. What can Vishvantara see?
Are you muted, Vishvantara?
I can see Jnanadhara, Subhadramati, and myself, and then a few small boxes on the top.
Okay. Maybe switch to speaker view, Subhadramati, and you'll see whoever's speaking to you then, if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, cool. Great, that's important. So, how did you meet, Subhadramati? How did you meet?
So we met on our very first meditation course, which was run by the London Buddhist Centre, but it was a bit of an outreach. So it wasn't in the centre itself, it was in this little hard room in the centre of town. And it was, Vishvantara will be better at remembering the date, but it was quite a long time ago, about like, well, I was 22, I think. So that must have been 35 years ago or 34 years ago or something like that. And yeah, it was just a small course with maybe, I don't know, about 20 people on it. And I remember us all introducing ourselves. And I remember Vishvantara introducing herself. She wasn't Vishvantara then. So that was the beginning of our story, that we were just on that, we were on that course together.
And Vishvantara, was that your first time at the Buddhist Centre or at a meditation course?
Yes, it was. I had looked up meditation in City Limits. It was a magazine about what was on in London. And I looked up meditation because I was interested in learning to meditate. And whoever answered the phone at the London Buddhist Centre must have said that it was the Buddhist Centre, but I didn't hear it. I just was interested. I just said, is that meditation? And so I didn't know it was Buddhist. So I was very, very interested in what was lying behind the meditation, who was putting it on. So because I was so impressed with it and the teacher.
So that
Do you remember me, Vishvantara?
I remember you. I think I was in a pair with you for speaking to you, wasn't I? Quite early on in the course.
Oh, I can't remember that.
I think I do. Well, I do remember you from the course, but I particularly remember you from going for coffee afterwards.
Oh, okay. So did you? One thing I was curious, did you kind of head it off?
Well, we must have done.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, Subhadramati moved to live with me. Didn't it? Wasn't that long after.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So you quite quickly on you decided to cohabit.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, after that meditation course, it was 6 weeks long. Dharmarati, he was our teacher, and some people might have met him. He lives at Adhisthana. Well, actually, now when I look back, he was doing something really, really clever, which was he was helping everybody on the course to make friends with each other. But I mean, I wasn't aware of that at the time. But after every single class, he'd say really casually, "Oh yeah, so me and the team are going to go for a coffee at this cafe nearby. If anybody wants to come, feel free." So we'd all go and like talk about life, the universe, and everything. And then after that meditation course, he said, "Okay, the next course is at the Buddhist Centre."
Right.
So anyway, that was a bit of a shock to me, but that's a whole other story, because then suddenly I was in this land of Buddhism.
And how did you? Because you hadn't come for Buddhism either. You come for meditation.
No, I'd come for meditation,
Right,
so
right.
I didn't really like it, all the Buddhist images and everything. But I really liked Dharmarati, so I stuck it out. And then I don't know who it was, and we were both on it. Vishvantara came as well, that course. Actually, interestingly enough, just as an aside, from that very first course, we aren't the only 2 order members. There's 2 other order members from that very first course of about 20 people 35 years ago. There's now 4 order members.
So who are the other 2? Just
well, the other 2 are a man called Sadhara, who was, you see, Vishvantara's husband at the time.
Oh, right. Okay.
So Vishvantara come with her husband. And then he also got ordained. And then a woman called Amaragita.
Oh, Amaragita, right.
Yeah, so they all were on that course. So anyway, this husband, Vishvantara said to me, and we were all friends, you know, and Vishvantara said, "Oh, he's going off to Australia for like 3 months or 6 months or something. You could come and live with me." So I just said, "Okay." And then, as you do when you're like 22 or something, and we just lived together. Was it 3 months or 6 months? It felt like a really significant time anyway.
It was, I don't remember. It was, I think it was more like 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Felt a long time.
Yeah.
So you quite soon after you met, you were living together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And had you heard about this notion that friendship was part of the spiritual path? Like, were you kind of consciously being friends, or was it much more kind of organic, Subhadramati?
I definitely hadn't heard about it. I definitely wasn't doing it as some sort of Buddhist practice or something.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, when I look back, the only thing I can think of was we didn't know it. We'll see what Vishvantara said, but Dharmarati knew it. So he was doing this, I think, I don't know what you think, Vishvantara, I think he was doing something very skillful, and that he was fostering all our friendships with each other. He was giving us the conditions on, I don't know, almost, he was rejoicing in friendships when he saw them happening, but very, very subtly. So he wasn't doing this big, you've got to be friends, but he was like a skillful gardener or something, I don't know, was nurturing that along. So no, it wasn't even that at all. It just felt like a really great idea to live with Vishvantara, to live with someone else who's meditating. And we were so enthusiastic, like we were constantly meditating together and doing pujas and telling our life stories on I don't know, we must have got all those ideas to do all those things, but we just like really loved it.
So you must have picked up some of those ideas from somewhere.
From somewhere. Can you remember, Vishvantara?
I don't remember where we picked up the idea of doing life stories, maybe from some of the more experienced mitras who were around when we started going to the centre, and we went to the Sangha night, didn't we? Started going to Sangha night after the ethics course.
Oh, okay, yes.
And we got to know some mitras who probably, we used to go to the pub after the Sangha night class, didn't we?
That's right, we did, yeah.
And talked about everything. So might have got the idea from them.
Yeah.
But I do remember quite early on, I think maybe during the ethics course or shortly afterwards, that I had a dinner party and I invited you and others. I don't know if you remember that.
I hadn't remembered till this moment, and now I do remember it.
I probably made a quiche. Because I was into quiches. And I remember Dharmarati being really pleased that we were all meeting.
That's right.
Even though he wasn't present?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And did that seem strange to you, or?
Well, I just noticed it. I just noticed that he seemed very, very happy about it. And I was a bit surprised that would make him happy.
Yeah. That another person would be interested in your
Yes.
personal connections.
Yes.
Yeah. And mate, I wonder, was that kind of typical of the culture at the London Buddhist Centre at the time, that people would kind of come together and have dinner with each other and move into each other's houses? And like, was that unusual, or was it part of a general kind of atmosphere that was going on? I'm just wondering, if the culture was different back then. Maybe Subhadramati, you could respond to that. I don't know.
It's so hard to remember, isn't it? Because when you're in it, you don't really think of it being a culture or something.
Yeah.
I can't really, to tell the truth, I can't really remember anyone else apart from, I remember Dharmarati, I remember Vishvantara and a few other individual friends, but I wouldn't have known what the culture was, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But I think what was I going to say there? I can't remember what I was going to say. I was just really pleased to have some friends, I did also, well, that was the other thing. I didn't really have any friends before that.
Right.
So that makes me sound really sad. That's why I laugh. But because what had happened was, like, I had just quite recently moved to London from Glasgow.
Yeah.
And left all my university friends behind. And I'd sort of been hanging out with some friends who were much, much older than me. So I was 22 and they were like 30, which I thought was like ancient,
Sure.
So I didn't really have my own friends. They did really sophisticated things like drank gin and tonic and stuff like that. And I just, so somehow what happened when I came to the Buddhist Centre was I started to just have friends, especially Vishvantara, but just to have friends in the first place. I actually, looking back, realised I was quite lonely in London, although also quite excited. It was a funny mixture because it was the first time living on my own, which had a thrill to it. I'd always lived with my family or my boyfriend. So there was a thrill to living on my own and carving out my own life, but I was also lonely. So I don't really know what everyone else was doing, but I was just thinking, oh, this is really great.
Right. So it was in a way the beginning of developing that, well, lifelong friendships, clearly.
Yeah.
Coming from a place of, in a way, not being that connected.
Yeah.
What about you, Vishvantara, back then? Were you a bit, I don't know, are you from London? I don't even know.
I'd been living in London for a few years before I came to the Buddhist Centre.
Yeah.
About 5 years, I think.
Okay.
I had lost contact with my university friends that I moved to London with, who got married and then started to raise families. So I too was feeling lonely and without that network of friendship that you have at university that you so one can take for granted and think will probably last forever. But it didn't last forever in the form it was. So I was looking for friendship as well.
But you were married.
I was married.
There's a difference between the two of us, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were both, in a way, well, I mean, there was differences, but a similar kind of, maybe not consciously, but looking for people to be friends with. Yeah. And so you lived together for a time, and I have to ask you, how was that? Like, what was that like living together? Was it, because I imagine it might have been quite intense. Was it intense? It sounds intense from what you just.
Well, I felt that it was intense because our practice was so intense. Like, we meditated together. We both had jobs. We did pujas. We did the life stories. We met up with other friends and there in the house and invited them round. I remember meeting with Vajraganta and you and I and her all together. And we went to, I can't remember when this was, whether it was before or during or after. We went away for the weekend. Do you remember doing a puja where we read from the Bible?
Yes.
We didn't have any Buddhist texts then. It was very early on, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we had a Bible for some reason.
Do you remember which chapter and verse it was?
Yes, it was Romans. And it was the reading about love.
Oh, okay, very good.
They often read at wedding ceremonies there.
Oh yeah. Can you give us the gist of it?
It says that something, all the things that love is not, and then it says what love is. So it says love is not puffed up and not self-seeking, and then it says love is patient and I can't remember, long suffering.
And were you reading that because you were like, were you thinking in terms of love for each other, or? I've never heard of that before. A Bible reading in a puja.
I think we were just looking for the sort of the highest spiritual values, and maybe it was me who suggested it, but that was all that I had in my sort of memory of spiritual texts. Right.
Yeah.
But the feeling was, it was a feeling of just like huge excitement, like when you were a kid or something. I was just like, I don't like playing. What's that feeling? Oh, I don't know. Just like, well, creativity, I guess. Like, oh, here's somebody to really, really, really be creative with. And Vishvantara taught me loads of things as well. Like, it was the very first time I'd ever listened to classical music was when I lived in well, I was going to say community, that community of two with Vishvantara, and it was the very first time I ever went to see a Shakespeare play, because Vishvantara worked at the Barbican, which is a theatre in London. So it felt like I definitely felt like my eyes were getting opened up, not just to Buddhism, but all these other things. So it was all kind of, I'm not surprised we put the Bible in a puja, because we're just like, oh, let's do this, oh, we could do this, oh, and we could do that.
So there's kind of quite a lot of richness in other areas, not just meditation and Buddhism.
Yeah, but it was all up the one thing. It all just felt like the same thing, whether that, does that describe it?
You know, it's quite a vivid, I don't know, evocation of a particular time of just exploring, or, you know, human, like culture as well as the Dharma and friendship. And Vishvantara, did Subhadramati initiate you into anything that was new to you?
I think that very much so. And I think it was this excitement, this feeling of discovering a sort of mutual passion, which was creativity and the Dharma. And we would talk about our meditations, about things we were learning, about what was happening in our spiritual lives and our lives, let alone spiritual lives, just all of it. And there was no barrier to communication, it felt like to me. It was very, very open, and I'd never known anything quite like it. So I think Subhadramati initiated me into that, really.
Okay. Like a particular quality of communication.
Quality of communication, which was to do with what was most precious, and being very excited about that.
Okay. And did you feel similarly, Subhadramati, like in terms of that kind of openness, or was that new to you as well?
Well, I definitely felt similar. I know I never had that kind of connection with anyone before, so it was new. And the whole thing, it was like ours living together was a sort of, at the heart of the whole thing was really exciting. Like I couldn't believe it when I came across, not just the Dharma itself, but well, maybe actually I was picking up by this time on the culture of Triratna. It was the FWBO then. Like I couldn't, everything just felt exciting. There was different ways to live. Like I'd grown up in a really small village in Scotland, and like everybody, the only choice looked like it was to be like get married and have children, and I'd never wanted to do that. But I never knew, I didn't know, up until then, I didn't know where that left me, you know, not wanting to do that. So suddenly it was like, oh, look, here's a whole alternative way to live. And I was starting to find out about like Buddhist communities and so on. Yeah, so the whole thing I just remember as a time of like tremendous excitement and sort of upheaval, you know, like it was like Pandora's box opening up and everything just spilling out, which also wasn't always enjoyable, you know, everything was just heightened,
so
you know, like
tiffs or a few, I don't know, like.
I don't think there must be to remember that, but more just I was just more thinking about my inner life in general, like everything, there was just a sort of explosion of everything. And then there was the sort of Vishvantara as becoming a closer and closer friend within that. That was mutual,
That's what I'm picking up, a strong mutual interest and a strong mutual availability, maybe. You're very available to each other. Yeah. And I don't, I mean, you're English. Was that interesting that you're from different backgrounds? I don't know. Like, did you learn about yourself in that way? That, you know, because often, I mean, I remember when I felt that other people were different to me. I know it was a revelation to me. I didn't realize that other people were so different. I don't know if something similar happened to you.
I remember when we told our life stories, I remember noticing the difference in our you know, lives so far, kind of thing, and where we came from, and the conditions that just very vividly some of the things that you talked about, your family, your university life, you know, your boyfriends, and just getting to know another person so sort of almost suddenly. Well, it was gradual obviously over all the years we've known each other, but at the beginning it was very intense and very sudden, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So to hear a life story after not knowing somebody very long is quite something, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mean rather than gradually picking up little bits
Yes.
of information, which might be a bit more normal, you've got a whole great big
Yes.
dollop of experience in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Were you going to say something there, Subhadramati, or?
Well, I was going to say something, I said slightly different, but all because I don't think I thought of that so strongly about our different countries that we came from. Well, I was thinking of a third element, which was, well, one thing that was similar is that we'd both been Catholic.
Oh, right.
And I think at the beginning, do you think this is true? I think we were kind of Catholic Buddhists at the beginning. Do you think, Vishvantara? Because I think just when you said meeting different people, then eventually we lived in a small community together. Vishvantara's husband came back and I went away. But then after a while, you two sort of amicably parted. You're still friends, aren't you? You're Sadhara. But Vishvantara and I went to live in a little 4-person community. And one of the other people, do you remember Julia? She wasn't a Catholic. Suddenly, I just remember that thing of that we were in this kind of very intense friendship together. Then it was quite interesting when a third person was in that, and I think that was it was great actually, because it made me realize, oh, there's different, I had certain assumptions about Buddhism that were based on Catholicism, and I think we might have both had them the same, i.e. reading the Bible during Buddhism.
Yeah, right. And can you say, maybe Vishvantara, did you have any kind of assumptions that were revealed to you in that, when you started meeting people who weren't Catholic Buddhists? Protestant Buddhists?
I don't remember that process, to be honest. No.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't remember making that distinction.
Sure. And I'm really curious. I imagine I don't know if those were the years of therapeutic blasphemy. Was that still in the air in the 80s in London?
Oh, that's very interesting. I do remember going on a day for people that were now Buddhists but had been Catholics. Were you on that day, Vishvantara?
I don't remember.
By Vishvantara. People might have heard of an order member called Vishvantara. He's leads a lot of retreats, and he's also written that book, Meeting the Buddhas. Anyway, he led a day for people that had been Catholics who were now Buddhists, but I don't know if it was a bit blasphemous. I mean, I can tell you about it. It's not really so much about our friendship, because
No, I just wondered, had you talked in that area, or had you explored that area of actually, confronting maybe the unhelpful aspects of that conditioning?
I feel vaguely that we have, but I can't now remember it.
Have you any memories, Vishvantara? Or?
I don't have any strong memories of that in our friendship. I don't. But I think we must have talked about it.
Yeah.
Because yes, I think I've changed quite a lot. I think I was quite influenced by what I heard about Christian conditioning when I came to the centre. I was quite influenced by that, but I think over the years that's changed quite a lot. So I now appreciate my Catholic upbringing a lot more than I did in those days.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be a kind of a common theme in a sort of early life, as opposed to sort of middle or later life, that one starts appreciating some of the things which one kicked against when one was smaller. I don't know if Subhadramati, did you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's similar with
Are you still kicking?
What's that?
Or are you still kicking?
No, it's similar with me. I think it's similar, actually. I appreciate it more now. Yeah. I think the main thing that when I was saying the example of that third friend who came along, that she didn't seem to suffer from guilt
Right.
in the same way. And I remember thinking, oh, like that, or a sort of certain kind of piety that was a certain kind of piety that wasn't really helpful dharmically.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
she didn't have that, and I remember that being something I thought, oh, like that's very interesting because here's someone that hasn't got that conditioning. Yeah.
yeah. I was one of the things I was going to ask you. In a way, you answered it a while ago, which is kind of the way you learn about yourself in contrast often with others.
Yeah.
And you know, you talked a little bit a while ago about what you learned from each other in terms of being, you know, initiated into new worlds of theatre or music.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's particular things that you've learned from each other by way of kind of contrast or I don't know. Did you sort of see what I'm asking?
Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. Can you think of what can you think of Vishvantara?
What we've learned from each other.
Yeah, what you've learned from each other.
Well, I've learned so much from you, and I feel it's all in relation to revering and relying on the Dharma. Actually, what I remember is that very early on, you were very committed. Like you started working in a Buddhist business very soon after we lived together, if not during. I think I can't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah.
So in very early days, and you pursued your spiritual life with a passion and a commitment which I shared emotionally, but I don't think I was as integrated psychologically, because I have suffered from periods of mental illness when things fragment and disintegrate, and I go to pieces quite a lot. So I have suffered from those times. So I think what I've learned from you a lot is to do with integration, to do with commitment, to do with how one manifests one's passion for the Dharma in the world. I feel you've taught me a lot about that.
And you must have, I suppose, in a way, you saw that up close, lived.
Yes.
Yeah, not just as an idea or as an expression, but as an actual lived, concrete kind of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And so, Subhadramati, what do you think you've learned? Can you say?
Well, yes, it's something like it's interesting. I wonder if I just a word learned or something like almost be something about richness, you know, like I just think Vishvantara is such a sort of rich character that I feel like I just I don't know, I feel like enriched would be the word I would use. I'm sure there's learning as well, but I mean there's loads of learning, like even now, like I'm always like, you know, asking Vishvantara to help me with things like, especially in the like poetry and writing, and so there is learning, but I think this enriched means is even more important to me. Like I think, you know, well, I just, you know, just think of Vishvantara as, well, it is your name, isn't it? Like the universe within, so kind of multifaceted. Like I think in a certain way, I'm quite a sort of simple sort of character. I just kind of, you just sort of point me in a direction, I just sort of go. And then Vishvantara is just, you're much more kind of complex in the positive sense of the word character, that's just got all these different facets and talents and sort of views on the very original views on life. So it's just, I think I've just benefited from just well, whatever metaphor, either soaking that up or being in that sort of, in the radiance of that. So I think the effect is enriching.
One really vivid memory I have of the two of you is an order. It was either an order convention or a big order gathering at Istana. And Subhadramati, the two of you were having a conversation about Bante's poems. And it felt more like, Subhadramati, you were kind of interviewing Vishvantara about the poems. And I remember it's incredible depth of analysis and understanding that Vishvantara you were kind of revealing about. I remember you saying, well, when Bhante wants to use a one syllable word for the Dharma, he uses the law. I mean, it was so specific that you'd actually, you'd thought about the way the particular word that Bhante used for the Dharma, and what it meant metrically in terms of how many syllables it had. And I wanted to ask you about, I mean, you talked earlier about creativity, how the communication was very creative, and how that really kind of sparked both of your interest in pursuing each other and pursuing the friendship. And I know that you're both poetry lovers and poetry makers. You both write poems. And I was curious about, where that started, that kind of love. Maybe did it predate your friendship? Did it come into being through your friendship? Or how did that happen? Maybe Vishvantara, you could say something about that.
Yes. Well, I remember that we, on that, when we went to stay in Cornwall, and we did creative writing together. So it was very early that we started doing that with each other. So we both must have shared that we were interested in that. I think it can't, when you live with somebody, you see their books and you start talking about books and what we liked. So we knew we were interested in literature and poetry, and we wrote together. And Subhadramati, you sent it to me, the writing that you did. Do you remember? Years later.
No.
Wrote about blackberrying.
Oh.
We gathered blackberries and cooked a crumble together.
That's right. Yeah.
Wrote about blackberrying. And it was a beautiful thing. And we went on the very first Wolf at the Door retreat, which is a creative writing retreat together, in 1996. Oh. And we started a writing group in London after that, didn't we?
Or before, sometime around then, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is you and others?
Yes.
Writing, sharing your writing with others?
Sharing writing, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and doing writing together.
But it was terrible. I thought it was such an exciting time, because what happened that really helped that by coincidence was the London Buddhist Centre opened up this art centre. It's closed down now. And then, so we had our writing group in the art centre, but also we did our first poetry performance together with others. And it was amazing because loads of people came, like, I don't know, about 50 people came or something. Wow. Which is amazing, because in normal life,
that's quite
you wouldn't even get that many people at a poetry reading. But it was something about, because it's a great place to be a poet, is in a Buddhist centre, because you get to read your poems in front of tons of people. Anyway, I just remember that being so exciting. Just having our very first poetry performance with others together, and we practiced for ages, didn't we? And put the whole program together. And actually that was a bit blasphemous. Remember, we did a few blasphemous poems.
Yes.
On that thing, and we did these blasphemous, and then there was a huge storm, because I always remember it was a bit apocalyptic, that we did this blasphemous poems, and then all this lightning started to strike and everything, this big storm.
Did you have doubts, Subhadramati?
What's that?
Did you have doubts?
Did I have doubts? No, I was really happy. That was just confirmation that we're on the right path. So maybe what I'm trying to say is there was our love of writing, but then also there was a complete context to allow that to flourish, because there was this art centre in London, there was these Wolf at the Door retreats that an order member called Ananda and Manjushvara started up, and they were just so exciting as well. It was so freeing. So you had just total encouragement to give that free rein, and also that it was in the context of Dharma practice. So everything, yeah.
So when you say freeing, what was freeing about that, do you think?
It was, well, I just remember the atmosphere on that first poetry retreat was a bit, sort of almost a bit wild. It was mostly order members, but it was order members you'd never seen them before, instead of just sitting quietly meditating or giving these really proper Dharma talks. It was like, because it was something artistic, it was like below the radar. It was kind of accessing things that were below the radar of the conscious mind, I suppose. So I just remember, that's the word I'd use, a sort of wildness, a sort of freedom, a sort of joy, something was unleashed on those early retreats. Is that how you remember them, Vishvantara?
Yes, I do. I remember us all sort of dancing around the room, shouting out our favourite words from a certain poem. Do you remember doing that?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Do you remember what the poem was?
Yes, it was Seamus Heaney's Postscript, which is the last one in the spirit level.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, quite a famous poem.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you actually, when you mentioned Seamus Heaney, was there or is there a particular poet that you both have a love for, that you like to wax enthusiastic about, or is that a cyclical thing where people come in and out of your interest? I don't know, Subhadramati, is there a particular poet?
We do share some, and then Vishvantara often introduces me to new ones. But Vishvantara just, there's I don't want it to make it sound, I want to be sure you realize that there's Vishvantara is much more advanced than me in poetry, is what I'm trying to say, both in the writing of it and in the sort of encyclopedic knowledge of it and the reading of it. Like, I think Vishvantara is a much greater reader and writer and has more knowledge, so has introduced me to Philip Larkin comes to mind. Loads of people. Whenever you're up, my mind always goes blank when I'm asked about poets. But so we do. Well, I mean, we both. I don't know if you were going to ask about this, but we both really do love Bante's poems.
Oh yeah.
And I think we have enhanced each other's love of those poems.
Yeah, Vishvantara, Subhadramati was telling me that you did a kind of a Bante-a-thon, kind of poetry reading where you read all of his poems in a day, or what exactly did you do?
We did. We actually, we took a whole day, and I think it was 12 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah.
12 hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We read through the complete poems 1941 to 1994, the blue book with the stars on.
Yeah.
We read through that out loud. We took it in turns to read the poems. People brought us lunch and dinner, left it outside the small shrine room at the London Buddhist Centre. And we did it as a fundraiser, didn't we, I think?
Yeah. And you know what the fundraiser was for?
No.
It was for me to come and live in Dublin.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so it all connects up. And what I remember about that experience is, I mean, it sounds like that cliche people say, oh, the hours went by like minutes. But that really was true. Like, that's my strongest experience of that. Like, it completely didn't feel like 12 hours. Like, we weren't tired at all. Actually, we went on and led our writing group that evening, didn't we? So we just like Vishvantara said, we'd read a few each and then just sort of swap over just organically. And it just was amazing, actually. We just went on like that the whole day. And we got to the end and we had to start again, didn't we?
We did. And people came in and out, didn't they? Just listened to a few.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Subhadramati. So you moved country.
Yeah, I did.
And Vishvantara, you stayed where you were.
Yes.
And how did that change your friendship?
That for me really showed me how loyal Vishvantara was, because Vishvantara just stayed like such a loyal friend throughout that time, and we kept in touch. I don't know how we kept in touch. You didn't even have email in those days or mobiles or anything, but anyway, we kept in touch. And Vishvantara came and visited a few times, and I'd go back to the UK and stay at Vishvantara's community. And that really is quite something, because I don't know if any of you have moved country. Well, you have obviously, Jnanadhara, like friends always promise to keep in touch, but not that many actually do, in my experience. So I had a lot of friends who promised to keep in touch, and I probably promised them as well, but Vishvantara was one of a small handful of friends who actually did. And I never felt it never sort of diminished our friendship at all. It just felt like it just kept growing, our friendship, during that time.
So, and what was it like? It sounds like that meant quite a lot to you, that Vishvantara kept up with you in that way when you were in a new place, a new country.
Yeah, no, it really did. Yeah.
And what was your? I mean, there would have, I imagine, been a sense of loss or separation, Vishvantara, when Subhadramati left. I mean, how was it for you?
I was afraid that there would be. However, what actually happened was that when I visited, I would go for 2-3 nights. And so we'd have this very intensive time together where we could talk about everything in our lives that needed talking about. And so my experience was actually that we got closer almost, because we had this very intense time together where everything important could be said. So there was actually a growth, I thought a growth, a deepening that with the coffee, between work and supper or whatever, doesn't give you so much time to do
I
that.
suppose and maybe the preciousness of the opportunity wouldn't be quite so apparent either. Yeah, interesting. Well, I was actually going to ask you, what's kept you interested all these years? What keeps the friendship alive? Because it's quite something to have known someone for 3.5 decades. It's quite something.
Yeah.
I don't know, Subhadramati, what sort of keeps the exploration happening, or I hope that's not too personal a question.
No, it's not a personal question. It's just it's good to probably reflect on it. I mean, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's just like a sort of gravity like draws me to Vishvantara. If I haven't seen her for like too long, I just think, I don't know, I can't really describe it actually. I've not tried to put it into words.
Well, in a way, that's quite expressive. Gravity is pretty expressive metaphor.
Yeah.
What about you, Vishvantara?
Well, to me, it's that there's I place such a high value on my time with Subhadramati, because it feels as though that time is that there's a not made explicit, but it's very precious time that we spend together communicating. So I always know what I'm going to, pretty often I would know what I wanted to talk about, what was most important to say and what was most important to hear about. So I feel as though we knew each other. I actually wrote a poem for Subhadramati's 50th birthday, where I describe our friendship as though we met when we were children. That's how long it seems to stretch back. And that what Subhadramati has taught me is about trust in friendship. And I really trust the friendship, and I really trust Subhadramati's practice, and know that I'm going to get something very valuable from our contact. And it invariably is the case. I would say invariably.
Wow, that's quite something to say.
And I think we make good use of our time, but also we make sure that what keeps it alive is we often look for things we can do together. Like we've done poetry courses and classes together. We've done retreats together. We've done like the thing you mentioned, doing Bante's poems, both the Bante-a-thon and the conversation. So many things that we look for opportunities to do things the way we've got a common task. And I think what keeps friendship alive often is not just two people talking about their inner lives, but actually focused on something that goes out somehow.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Do you mean in a way the two of you are engaged in creating something or doing something which other people can benefit from?
Yeah,
Right.
we have done a little bit of that,
Yeah.
and so to me, those are very precious times.
Yeah. Hey, have you got that poem?
I have. I brought it, and I brought a picture of us on that retreat at Dharma Kosha I mentioned. So
I look at that.
there's Subhadramati, and there am I.
So this is the wolf at the door.
Yes.
That's brilliant. So what year was that?
96.
96. Very good. Well, what I'd like to do is throw it open, but maybe just to round off, throw it open to people who may have questions for the both of you. But maybe just to finish off this bit, would you read your poem, Vishvantara?
I certainly will.
Yeah, wonderful.
It's called Head Over Heels. First there was the grasping of the rail and jumping up on both feet till one's waist was pressed against metal, before a fall forwards into space, the body curling upside down and round, landing with feet flat on the earth again. I don't remember which friend taught me to do this, just the fear I'd never risk it, followed by the joy. We girls played French elastic on the pavement or dared each other to jump off the shed in my front garden and flashed up and down the empty close on bikes, pinging bells. I swear I knew you then. My sense of you stretches back so long now, it's confused with Kirby grips, cat's cradle, fur-lined muffs, instead of what did surround its inception, 27 years ago last April. Green cushions, candles, scent of morning star, instructions to sit down and close the eyes that prefaced entry into that all new, now handed on by us. Still something echoes my childhood days in present ones. It's this familiar trust, a kind of falling forwards, feet landing safe on unfamiliar ground.
Wow, magic. Fantastic. Thanks for bringing that along. Well, that's very fitting close. Wonderful. I feel like I've had privileged access, so I just wanted to throw it open to see if other people have got questions that they might like to. What I'll do is I'll read them to you. People might need to take a couple of minutes to write them in. So comments, Vajeshwar has told us that comments are now open. So I'll just read them to you when they come in, so you can just relax.
I've thought, can I, when we're still waiting for questions, can
I? But go ahead if you want to say something. Yeah.
You just get streaming this. Well, I wanted to say, I think what I have learned from Vishvantara is generosity and friendship. So I think Vishvantara's you're just a really, really generous friend. I don't mean necessarily, including obviously materially, but more just generous of spirit. Like I just know, and I've always known this, that I really could ask Vishvantara anything. Like, I don't know, like just the person you could phone up in the middle of the night, or not that I've actually literally done that, but I know if I did, like Vishvantara would respond. or, you know, just the way, like, as you asked me about this evening and said, how about you and Vishvantara do it? Like, I just know that Vishvantara, if asked to do something, that she'll just say yes if she at all can't. Like, I can almost sort of speak for her in a way and say, oh yeah, I think, you know, Vishvantara will want to do that. So yeah, just a real, just a real attitude of generosity, an attitude of giving and friendship. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I kind of, in a way, I remember that moment when I said, oh, you could maybe do it with Vishvantara. And you said, oh, look, I'll just text her.
Yeah.
And you texted her, and we were on the phone or on a Zoom call. And literally about 3 minutes later, it was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I couldn't believe it. It was so easy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Maybe if you could just unmute yourself and if you have a question and just say it. Actually, it looks like Marco. Are you typing something there?
Yeah. I was going to ask a question. Well, it's very inspiring to see, a friendship like for so long. So I'm just curious if you have a piece of advice on how could you keep, authenticity and be natural in a friendship? What are the keys? Is there any key or something? Maybe it's difficult to say, just be yourself, but I don't know. I just wonder.
Vishvantara? Yeah. What's the key?
That's a great question, Marco. And I think from what I wrote in that poem was about taking risks in communication. And I think that is part of friendship. To go deeper in friendship is to take a risk in communication. And I have sometimes taken risks with my friendship with Subhadramati, not necessarily all at the beginning either. I think, along the way, taken risks in what I share about myself and my inner life. And yes, it does deepen trust, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
Did you have something to add, Subhadramati?
Well, I think that's very good. I wanted to ask Marco back because you said being authentic. Is that like opposed to is it being authentic as opposed to being superficial or something? You know what I mean?
No, I mean, like, it's basically more about, well, I don't know the word in English, maybe how to be as natural as possible, how to be, sometimes depending on, who you are, you try to maybe adapt yourself, or just being from another culture,
Yeah.
like you are always trying to, be understood.
Yeah.
Or like having in mind what is the like maybe the frame of mind that you are being. I don't know, I mean, how could you be natural on this?
Okay. Well, I wonder it might sound like a cliche that time also helps, and especially things like Vishvantara said, like we've lived together for periods of time, we've worked together for a short time together. Once you do that with people, it's hard to sort of keep up any sense of pretense, because people just see you in all different moods, all different situations. And then especially when you realize that they're still your friend, even though they've seen you sort of at your worst, as it were, I think that can build up trust, and it can lessen the need to try and pretend to be like a certain sort of person. You just realize over time by proximity, but also there are like practice, like I don't know, have we formally done the practice of confession much together, Vishvantara, but I feel that I would always, like, if I'd done anything unskillful, Vishvantara is somebody I would confess to. So that's an actual practice that means that Vishvantara sort of knows that I'm trying to deliberately practice not hiding anything. I don't know. Does that sort of help?
Yeah, I guess like yeah, contact. Be like risk, taking risk in the and sharing as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like life. I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Marco.
Julie, you had a question there. Maybe you could you just unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, I was just thinking. Yeah, it's really beautiful insight to such an amazing friendship, and I was curious to know if you trained for ordination around the same time, or did you get ordained at different times? And also, if you were ordained at different times, did that kind of change your friendship, or just, yeah, I don't know, just curious around that.
Okay, good question. We actually got ordained quite far apart. So, but the funny thing is, once you're in the order, you'll know this yourself when you join the order, Julie, that you don't notice anymore. Once you're in the order, you don't really think about when each other got ordained. But I did get ordained first. And that's very interesting. That'd be interesting to ask Vishvantara. I can't remember. So there's a period where I was in the order and Vishvantara wasn't. But I can't remember that making a significant difference to our friendship. I suppose it meant that I was doing certain things like going on order gatherings and so on. But I never felt that took away from the friendship with Vishvantara. And then what was then amazing was that I was then able to be on the team for Vishvantara's ordination retreat later. And so then that was a joy, because then that was like just to be there to welcome Vishvantara into the order and, just celebrate that. Yeah, that felt like a sort of bonus. Yeah.
And how was it for you, Vishvantara, on the other side of the friendship?
Well, yes, it was 10 years between our ordinations. So I remember feeling that on the one hand, it didn't make any difference. In a certain kind of way, it didn't make any difference in the level of trust I felt, in the level of enjoyment of it all. But in another way, it did make a difference as I saw Subhadramati, becoming more and more effective as an order member. I was impressed. I was really, really impressed by her practice. And so in the end, I asked her, I can't remember how long before my ordination, I asked you, Subhadramati, if you'd be a Kalyana Mitra to me. But you agreed, and we had a Kalyana Mitra ceremony with my other Kalyana Mitra, Shubha, when after my ordination. And it was significant to me to do that because it showed the part Subhadramati had played in helping me to become ordained. Subhadramati's friendship was a crucial part of that preparation for ordination. I feel without the friendship, I'm not sure I think it would have taken even longer. So yeah, so it's something to feel that I look up to Subhadramati as my Kalyana Mitra at the same time as feeling that trust and confidence to be myself totally, that I don't have to, like Marco's question, I don't have to try and be good in some sort of way. I can be myself. Yeah.
Should pull you up on that, Subhadramati being good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. yeah, I just want. I mean, maybe we'll sort of draw to a close, and I just wanted to thank you for being just so generous with your lives, really, and sharing so openly and so wholeheartedly. And it was just really wonderful to see you singularly and to see you as a kind of as a pair, both your own people, but also both your own people in relationship with each other. It's a lovely, just a beautiful thing to be held up. So I'm really delighted that that you so generously and so openly and so happily offered to do this when I asked. So yeah, I just wanted. It's always a slightly awkward moment on Zoom. It's like normally there'd be a round of applause, and but I just maybe if you want to unmute, you can make a little noise or. But I just really want to thank you for coming. So thanks very much.